They never merely believed I was unsuccessful. That evening, during my brother's engagement celebration, my family ensured every guest knew it. I remained silent at the table, hands folded in my lap as my father chuckled about my wasted time. My brother grinned, and my mother agreed as though it were undeniable truth. I offered no rebuttal, I made no attempt to justify myself. Then, his fiancée leaned forward and murmured softly, "Hold on, you're—" The entire room fell quiet. Even my mother stiffened. Before I reveal what followed, hit like, comment where you're reading from, and share if your relatives ever undervalued you, because that hush altered everything in that precise instant. My name is Lauren Hayes, and in my household, names carried weight only when paired with credentials worth boasting about. Agent, dealer, financier, anything that sounded reliable, foreseeable, and lucrative. Mine never did. It drifted through discussions like faint static, noted only when someone required a foil. The engagement meal took place in an exclusive room in the city center, the sort with rich paneling and muted lamps designed to make occupants appear accomplished. Crisp linens, substantial cutlery, a waiter topping off drinks without prompting. My parents favored venues like this. They held that the setting you occupied spoke louder than any explanation you might offer. I was placed 2 seats from my brother, near enough to catch every aside, distant enough to remain peripheral. He appeared at ease, self-assured, already rehearsing the part of forthcoming family leader. Guests angled toward him when addressing him, chuckled more enthusiastically. My parents regarded him with the expression they displayed throughout my life whenever he was the topic. Gratitude blended with satisfaction. No one genuinely inquired about my well-being. When a glance did come my way, my mother stepped in before I could respond. "Lauren's still sorting her direction," she stated kindly, as if ironing a crease visible only to her. My father contributed remarks about tolerance, about how not everybody was equipped for genuine demands. They beamed as though extending mercy. I concentrated on the tabletop, the dancing flame, the subtle aroma of seared meat and spice, the murmur of voices seeping from the main hall beyond. These elements anchored me. I discovered long ago that remaining motionless allowed others to converse as if I weren't present. My brother's fiancée sat opposite me. She didn't command the gathering. She studied it. When my parents commented, she absorbed without cutting in. When my brother described his career, she posed queries that forced him to elaborate. Her gaze shifted deliberately, registering inflection over content. At one juncture, my father quipped about how unlike my journey had been. The group chuckled courteously. I sensed that known constriction in my torso, the kind born from being reshaped into a narrative controlled by others. I offered no correction. I provided no defense. Quiet had become my instinct, not from frailty, but from exhaustion at justifying an existence no one wished to comprehend. What nobody at that table realized was that this wasn't merely another meal for me. It was an examination of how long I could endure a spacecraft to marginalize me and what might occur if someone at last detected the fissures. My name had perpetually arrived last in talks of achievement. Not proclaimed, not honored, merely tacked on like an afterthought no one intended to examine. That evening in the eatery wasn't novel. It was merely amplified. As my brother outlined his upcoming intentions, my parents inclined forward, affirming each phrase. My father supplied embellishments, enhancing facts, transforming routine milestones into epic tales. My mother beamed in the manner she reserved when convinced she was displaying an ideal household to outsiders. Periodically, one of them cast a look my direction long enough to confirm I remained in the frame. Scarcely. Their remarks transported me backward. Several months prior, I'd unlocked my device to find images posted from an event at my parents' residence. A professional mixer. Cocktails on the terrace. Attendees in fitted suits gathered by the water, smiling. I hadn't received an invitation. When I later mentioned it to my mother, she seemed startled that I'd observed. She explained it was highly specialized and she hadn't wanted me to feel out of place, as though omission were compassion. Then there was the seasonal cookout. The warmth, the scent of burning coals, disposable dishes sagging under portions. I'd been chatting with someone by the railing when my father's tone rose over the soundtrack. He was boasting once more about my brother, about the enterprise, about inheritance. Then he chuckled and referenced me, not with admiration, with entertainment. Guests grinned uneasily. Someone touched my elbow as if I'd suffered a significant defeat, and all were aware. Back at the dining surface, my brother raised his vessel and observed that not everybody follows the conventional path. He delivered it lightly, like a neutral remark, yet his glance darted toward me. A signal, a boundary marked. I experienced the accustomed strain beneath my sternum. The impulse to reply, to amend the account, to utter something cutting enough to halt them. Instead, I drew a measured inhale and clasped my fingers firmer. I'd realized that responding merely granted them greater authority. Quietude, at least, was mine. The most painful aspect wasn't the jests, it was the propositions. My brother had phoned me prior to the engagement. Tone gentle, worried. He inquired if I required assistance acquiring suitable attire, stated he didn't wish me to feel self-conscious. The suggestion was evident I was the issue requiring oversight. At the table, my mother bent toward my brother's fiancée and discussed my prospects as if they were an unfinished bother. She spoke of steadiness, of how perhaps someone would provide for me someday. Her palm rested on my shoulder, gentle yet claiming. That was the instant something altered. I didn't raise my eyes immediately. I centered on the rhythm of my pulse, even, and managed. All those evenings laboring solo, all the discussions I couldn't disclose, all the choices I'd reached without seeking permission. They assumed my reserve indicated doubt. They mistook my composure for reliance. Opposite me, my brother's fiancée had ceased smiling. She was observing, truly observing. And for the initial time that night, I sensed unmistakably that the narrative they'd crafted about me was nearing its limit. I didn't recoil when my mother's palm lingered on my shoulder overly long. I didn't glance at my brother when he affirmed as though my prospects had been tidily settled. Externally, I remained precisely unchanged. Composed, motionless, compliant. Internally, something at last locked into position. The reality was my existence had never been as unstable as they supposed. It simply didn't resemble theirs. While my parents arranged gatherings and spoke boldly about expansion and status, my routine operated on another timetable. Dawn blended into dusk. My residence remained hushed, save for the soft whir of my computer and the rare ring from another continent. I grew to gauge advancement in minor verifications. Executed contracts, settled transactions, brief notes confirming advancement. There was no ovation. No spectators, only forward motion. I never discussed it, not from embarrassment, but because I couldn't. The effort required discretion. Pax remained delicate. One careless remark could unravel months of effort, so when my relatives extended aid funds, guidance, I smiled and refused. Permitting them to undervalue me was more secure than rectifying them. That evening in the venue, as dialogue circulated around me, I recognized how profoundly they'd confused self-control with fragility. They viewed my leased home as evidence of defeat. They regarded my plain garments as capitulation. They failed to notice the rigor required to exist discreetly while constructing something intolerant of interruptions. My brother reclined in his seat, content. My father requested additional drinks. My mother discussed forthcoming celebrations, already mapping seating. They were at ease, assured. I detected the change before words emerged. Across the table, my brother's fiancée had stopped participating in the household tales. Her focus returned to me repeatedly, reflective, intent. She wasn't heeding the statements anymore. She was noting the lulls, the instances when I opted not to reply. The manner I didn't hasten to protect myself. I'd encountered that expression previously on Connections, where individuals grasped they'd erred in judgment. For the first occasion that evening, I allowed a fuller breath, not because I anticipated aid, not because I sought affirmation, but because I comprehended something they didn't dominate. Doesn't always declare itself. Sometimes it bides. The meal proceeded, but the equilibrium had shifted already. My parents continued speaking, continued acting. My brother remained poised, yet a mounting strain simmered below, like a subtle cord stretched excessively. I stayed seated. I stayed quiet. Not because I lacked alternatives, but because I knew precisely when speaking would count. The attendant returned with fresh beverages, placing them delicately, oblivious that the atmosphere at our table had transformed. My father lifted his glass initially, anxious to reclaim command. To kin, he declared, beaming broadly. And to fresh starts. All repeated him, save me. I raised mine moments later, sufficiently not to draw notice. I'd mastered enduring such instances by lingering a fraction delayed. My brother began another anecdote about his ambitions. Larger residence, greater duties, grander horizon. He spoke with the assurance of one never challenged. My parents supplemented for him, overlapping, refining each line until it shone. And Lauren, my father inserted abruptly, gesturing vaguely my way as if recalling a late point. Well, she's always been self-reliant. The delay before that term was intentional. My mother chuckled lightly. She prefers handling matters independently. She phrased it like describing persistent traits they wished would fade. We simply desire her stability. You understand how harsh the world can be. I sensed the known clenching in my chest, the instinct to contract. I kept my gaze on the surface, the pattern of the timber, a slight mark near my dish. Anything tangible? Opposite me, my brother's fiancée didn't avert her eyes. She angled her head marginally, examining me as though an idea had just aligned. Then she inquired evenly, Lauren, what precisely is your occupation? The query arrived, unlike the rest. It wasn't offhand, it wasn't mere courtesy. It was pointed. Before I could reply, my brother laughed. It's involved, he interjected swiftly. Some digital venture. She's been exploring. My father concurred, glad to assume control. Many attempt such fields. It's a challenging arena. I felt warmth climb my throat. Still, I remained mute. The fiancé didn't grin. What sort of system, she pressed. Focus fixed on me? The table grew silent in an unfamiliar manner. My parents adjusted posture. My brother made a throat sound. She's humble, my mother nodded, touching my arm once more. She dislikes discussing it. That was when the fiancé inclined closer, voice lowered slightly. Not secretive, but sufficient to alter the mood. Is it distribution-oriented? She asked me. I raised my eyes for the first time in minutes. Yes, I replied. Single word. Serene. Firm. Her brows rose nearly imperceptibly. Worldwide, she proceeded. I affirmed. My brother laughed again, overly loud. See, that's what I meant. Quite ambiguous. The fiancé disregarded him. Her focus intensified. Professional now. Logistics enhancement? I felt my heartbeat ease. Yes. The quiet deepened. She breathed out gradually, gaze unwavering. Then she whispered, audible enough for all. Hold on, you're… She halted mid-phrase. The impact was instant. Dialogue ceased. Drinks halted mid-lift. Even the waiter nearby appeared to pause. It seemed the whole space had inhaled and forgotten exhalation. My father scowled. "What's that?" he queried, annoyance surfacing. The fiancée sat upright. "Lauren Hayes," she stated deliberately. "You're the creator, aren't you?" Silence persisted. I held her look and offered a slight affirmation. The noise my brother emitted wasn't fully laughter, nor fully shock. "Creator of what?" he insisted. She didn't respond to him. She retrieved her device from her purse instead, fingers moving deftly. When she rotated it, the title dominated the area between us. A piece, sector-specific. No images of me, merely evaluation. Figures, citations from backers lauding a creator who chose anonymity. She pushed the phone toward the middle. "This," she declared calmly, "is among the most monitored systems in the field currently. Discreet debut, solid initial momentum. Global scope." My father bent closer, peering. My mother's expression had emptied entirely. "We've sought a discussion for months," the fiancé added. "No publicity, no features, just outcomes." My brother shook his head. "That can't…" He ceased when noticing no attention. She regarded him, then at last. "You mentioned wanting me to encounter innovators," she nodded. Her tone wasn't biting. It was worse. It was measured. I didn't anticipate one seated opposite me. The space remained suspended. My mother's hand withdrew from my shoulder as if scalded. Her lips parted, then shut. She attempted again, but sound failed. My father gulped. "Why keep it from us?" he questioned. The sharpness in his voice softened by bewilderment. I didn't respond immediately. I lifted my glass, sipped modestly, and replaced it precisely. "You never inquired," I answered. My brother rose suddenly, seat grinding on the floor. "This is absurd," he retorted. "If accurate, we'd have known." The fiancé's gaze returned to her screen. "The intent was that you wouldn't," she replied. Something in my brother's face fractured. Not rage, dread. Around us, the eatery sounds gradually returned, but our tables stayed apart as if under glass. Guests now stared, murmured. I felt strangely removed, tranquil in a manner unforeseen. I didn't conceal it for demonstration. I stated, voice even. I concealed it because I didn't require endorsement. My father swallowed hard. My mother fixated on the linen, knuckles white. I rose, straightening my serviette before setting it by my dish. The action felt ritualistic, conclusive. "I ought to leave," I remarked, nodding to the fiancée. "Pleasure meeting you." She inclined her head once, admiration evident. I didn't glance at my relatives again. I didn't have to. As I exited the private area, the quiet trailed me. Not the accustomed quiet of disregard. This one was weighty, uneasy, deserved. Behind me, no voices rose. And for the first time ever, that quiet felt like fairness. I didn't hurry upon departing the venue. The evening breeze felt sharper than expected, grazing my face like renewal. I strolled a block before pausing, allowing the clamor to recede. My device vibrated once in my palm. I ignored it. For years, I pictured this scene concluding with raised voices or regrets. Instead, it concluded with absence. And somehow, that carried more gravity. In the ensuing days, the quiet endured. No household chats. No cautiously phrased messages feigning normalcy. When my mother eventually rang, her tone wavered. She posed queries that resembled efforts to steady herself more than true interest. I replied courteously, concisely. I no longer bridged the silences for her. My brother made no contact. I learned indirectly that the engagement meal grew strained in recollections. The account revised to safeguard ego. I permitted the revision. I didn't seek recognition. I sought separation. What astonished me most was the buoyancy once I ceased bearing their assumptions. My efforts persisted. Meetings, choices, advancement. Nothing altered there. What altered was the stillness within me, the perpetual readiness, the drive to validate to those who'd already fixed my identity. I understood then that closure doesn't always resemble harmony. Sometimes it resembles lucidity, like recognizing where you conclude and others' views commence. I didn't forfeit my relatives that evening. I forfeited the rendition of myself that kept diminishing to suit their mold. And I felt no loss. I once believed familial acceptance would complete me. Now I realize self-comprehension outweighed securing a place at their gathering. That evening didn't transform who I was. It unveiled it. If you've ever been undervalued by those meant to know you deepest, you're not isolated. Share where you're reading from and tell me what aided you in holding firm. And if tales like this resonate, subscribe so you catch the next.